Consistency enlarges capacity.
This is Spencer Hoole. It's easy to look at someone's life and assume success came all at once. But if you ask them to tell the whole story, you usually find something different. Small decisions, hard seasons, quiet disappointments, and lessons that only make sense looking back. Today, Spence reflects on a lifetime of work, relationships, and the unexpected experiences that reshape what success means to him. I'm Steve Harris, aka Rivers, and this is the Grandpa Channel. Let's listen. We have a great guest today, and his name is Spence Hoole. I've known Spence for close to 50 years. We won't divulge the exact relationship because then we'd have to kill people. No, Spence is my brother-in-law, and he's an amazing businessman and a great family man, and he's always got something really cool to talk about and to say. Anyway, Spence, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Steve. It's great to be here. Excited for the conversation.
Tell us a little bit about the arc of your career. Just give us an idea of where you came from and where you're kind of at right now.
Well, went to the University of Utah, and right after I graduated, I had plans to work for a couple years, then go back and get a business degree, and not the perfect job market at the time. I found myself in the insurance industry, which no one ever plans to get into it unless you had family members that were in. So that's where I ended up. When I first got into the business, I would throw in titles like, well, I'm doing risk management and I'm protecting assets and trying to sort of justify and make me feel a little bit more secure in my endeavors. And after a few years, I just told I shill insurance and that's basically it. But one thing that was interesting, people don't sit there in high school and wish that they were trying to be in insurance, but I saw tons of opportunity. I had an opportunity to start my own firm, and so I co-founded a company by the name of Diversified Insurance in 2001, and we built that up for 2 decades and had a wonderful run. And we did that for 20 years and then had an exit and partnered with IMA. I worked for IMA, and I currently help support and run our property and casualty employee benefits business.
Has it been kind of a wild ride for you? Lots of twists and turns, or was it just straight ahead and see at the top?
When I was a junior in high school, one of the great defining moments of my life was I got my ACT score, and it was so bad, it was embarrassingly bad. I had some friends that were incredibly bright. They were getting scores in the 30s. People, maybe there was a 28, a 29, and my ACT score. Now, mind you, I did not study, and I think I might have been filling in some staircases on the ABC multiple choice stuff, but it was a 16 with an 11 in math, like the worst. I mean, I think the special ed kids had performed better. And so I left East High School that day, and I was walking home, and I had this epiphany that some people probably don't get until they're age 40. And I was walking home, and I had a light flash that basically was, if I wanted to live the lifestyle that my parents had provided, which, home, shelter, food, I needed to get my act together. And it's not like I turned around like that day and decided to apply myself, but it sort of was the turning point to applying and doing the work.
I've been amazed at your iron work ethic. And your sister, my wonderful wife, and your brothers and all your other siblings have this incredible work ethic that your mom and dad, that's my guess, have inculcated in you guys in a wonderful way. My question is give us an idea of a day in the life of Spencer Hoole. Like, what time does it start at?
Well, on work ethic, some of it's motivated by fear. When I played basketball, I was a bubble player at best. And bubble players do not show up late for practice. If you're LeBron James, you can maybe skip practice. But when you're borderline ready to be on the cutting block, you're there 30 minutes early and you're running and working as hard as you can. And so I've sort
Right.
of always been driven by the fact that I feel like I need to overperform just to kind of be equal with others. And so a typical work day is I get up pretty early, much to the chagrin of my wife. So I'm bumping up out of bed around 4 a.m. And then I usually go for a run. Regardless of the weather, I'll run in the winter and the snow, and sometimes I'll go to the gym, but I try to get that in. And then I do feel like getting an early start in the office works well for me. I just kind of gets a chance to catch up on things, reflect a little bit, do some deep work before calls and meetings start happening. And so that's kind of a typical day in terms of getting started.
What were the early years of your career really like? I mean, sounds like fear played. I would clearly admit that fear played a big part in wanting to be a decent wage earner and try to support the family and stuff. But there must have been some really double clutch, white knuckle moments for you.
Oh, absolutely. So when I started in the business, the person who hired me said, "Look," and remember, this is 1992 dollars, but still, it's meaningful. And he said, "Look, in 5 years, you could be making $100,000 a year." I thought, $100,000 a year, that is amazing. And like I said, still good money, but this is even early 90s, even better money. And I got to year 5 and I was not making that yet. But I
Yeah.
had made one step back, two steps forward, and kind of this slow, steady progress. And so I could see potential and opportunity. But I will tell you, I remember, and this is probably 4 years into my career, I was struggling, trying to build a book of business and clientele and a couple successes, but then they kind of next year go away. And one time I had just found out in this a company called NPS Pharmaceuticals that we did not get the business. And I thought for sure we were going to land this account. It would have been a really nice account. And this is back in the days when you were wearing white shirts and ties to work. And I had been a long day, had gotten some disappointing news. I go down to the parking lot and I had this Toyota Corolla, which was a standard transmission, so a stick shift, and the battery was dead. And this was now, it was like 8:30 at night. Everyone's gone. And I'm like, I've been a failure all day. I probably suck as a husband because I'm still at work, not helping with the kids. My car doesn't start. It's hot. It's the summertime. So what I ended up doing is I push out my car and there was an incline in this parking garage. So I thought if I can just get to the incline, I can compression start it. Now, people under the age of 45 probably don't know what compression starting a vehicle is, but I just remember pushing the car, giving black stuff all over me on my white shirt. And that was a pretty low moment in terms of not winning the count, not cutting it at work, not doing the best as a husband or father, and your car doesn't even start. So that does stick out in my mind. That was a tough day.
So was it just a good night's sleep, Spence, or how did you get out of that deep hole?
I always tell people this is not a get rich quick business, but consistency enlarges capacity. And I think one of my sort of strengths that way is just being consistent, doing the work, law of the harvest kind of stuff, getting up, making the calls, writing the letters, showing up at the rubber chicken dinners, building relationships. And you just sort of build on that. And over time, good things can happen.
What are some lessons about people that you've learned along the way? Some maybe hard earned and some just like, wow, I didn't know that. But what are some lessons you've learned about people?
The biggest lesson it's taken years to learn it is to just assume positive intent about people. And for some reason, I just was naturally kind of, skewed negatively. And someone would say something and I can always like point something out or be defensive and I've tried over the years to kind of, hey, people are doing the best they can. We're all trying. We're all trying to get through, to use a popular or a current term, the Strait of Hormuz unscathed and without problems. And when I was in eighth grade, well, actually junior high. So this was one of the bigger defining moments. When I was in seventh grade, I showed up at Clayton Intermediate School, and for some reason, on day one, I was the most popular kid in the class. And it might have been because I had older siblings, or somehow my brand was, it was set. I was not prepared for that, and I didn't handle it very well. And candidly, I was kind of a jerk. I was immature. And one, I was literally immature in the sense that I was a year younger than everybody else. And when you're 12 years old, that matters. And I was insecure, and I did some things and treated people very poorly. And almost, well, not almost. I was a bully. I teased kids. And things that, quite candidly, if I ever run for president and they just want to revisit the seventh grade years, there'll be plenty of reasons and skeletons to hold me out of public office. But what happened then is in eighth grade, I went from having all this popularity and notoriety to actually having zero friends in eighth grade. I was the least popular kid. So I did this 180, most popular in 1 year. And then because of the way I treated others and the way I handled this sort of newfound success, I became sort of persona non grata. And to the point where we'd walk home from school and all the boys, my house was one of the first houses. I was not invited to go hang out with the kids or play football. It was very lonely for me in eighth grade. It was sort of my scyther in the snow year. And a lot of it, I remember thinking, I didn't fully understand this whole thing, karma or whatever, but I was self-aware enough that I brought a lot of this on myself, which was pretty good in the sense that I realized I needed to change some things about just being more likable. And again, it didn't happen all at once. And it was a tough journey, but that was a big turning point where I learned a really hard lesson. And when you go a year without friends, I think over time it made me much more empathetic and sympathetic to people. It did make me a better person, but it was a tough journey to get there. And so that's why I've always, people that are super successful or popular or those type of things, you never want to get too big for your britches because things can change quickly. And so a little humility and perspective can go a long way.
I've really noticed what you were talking about when I think about it, Spence, over the last, say, 20 years that we've known each other, that you are more willing to give somebody the benefit of the doubt. I went through a phase personally where I was just a smart aleck and kind of cynical. And then I just thought, well, why am I doing this? But I have noticed with you that you are quick to say, well, what about this or what about that? And I really admire that. And it kind of explains a lot of things when you explain eighth grade, which was, I think it's...
I'm still getting over eighth grade at age 57, still working through those issues.
That's kind of crazy. So looking back on your life, do you see divine orchestration? That's kind of a loaded question, and I'll put my biases on the table. At the tender age of 70, I'm about 12 years or so older than you. I now see much more clearly divine coincidences and things that happen for a reason that I didn't understand at the time. And do you see this now, or are you still figuring out what in the heck's going on?
No, I do see it. I'm a man of faith, and I have been blessed tremendously. And what happens when the moment you can't always see it, but looking back, you can kind of pick out, and sometimes even looking back, it could be 5 or 10 years. Think, man, that was a defining moment. I keep going back to, I believe me, I've gotten past high school and junior high, but I'll go back to one more kind of thing. And this involves Sunday school. And I remember being at church and the teacher would talk about gifts that we're blessed with, spiritual gifts. And I remember thinking, I wasn't trying to be humble. I was like, I don't think I got anything. I mean, some gifts are really evident, like a talent. So you're talking about like the parable of the talents. And somebody has talent in music, it's pretty evident if somebody can play instruments or sing, or they're skilled in that, or they're very smart. And I remember, and I was like, what do I have? What talent do I possess? And it wasn't until years later, and one of the things I do feel like I was blessed with was this ability to learn from other people's mistakes. And so I've been a good observer, and I know that may not sound like an incredible talent, but it saved me a lot of heartache along the way where I can kind of connect dots and kind of see this sort of causal effect in life that, hey, you know what? The stove is hot. I know it's hot because somebody told me it was hot. I don't need to go touch it myself. And I know it's a simple analogy, but I've been blessed tremendously, and I think it's divine intervention. In fact, I know it is, of helping me to learn from other people's challenges, mistakes, or successes in terms of studying those type of things and how can I apply that to my life and how can I improve. And so one of my gifts would be that sort of self-awareness and ability to learn from others.
I think that's a great idea. If you had to think back on your life, are there 2 or 3 mentors that have really, really helped you along the way in your life? Who would you pinpoint?
It's almost cliche because a lot of people probably say that their parents, but my parents, they were very good. My dad was someone, and you knew my dad well, but growing up, I didn't fully appreciate him because he wasn't like a typical American dad. We didn't go golfing or fishing together. We didn't hang out and talk sports together because he was an immigrant. English was a second language. He was working really hard. And he didn't pick up on some of the cultural nuances that maybe somebody who grew up in the United States and had more privileges did. But as time went on, and by the time I was probably 18, 19, I started recognizing that my level of respect for him grew enormously each year. Like, my gosh, this guy was like a really hard worker. He was totally selfless. Everything he did was to support his wife and family. He had no ego. Not perfect, but he was a continuous learner, tried really hard, and had a phenomenal run and did everything that you're supposed to do. And so he taught me a lot through example. And he was kind of a man of few words. He didn't sit down and pontificate or give me lots of advice. In fact, when I got into the insurance industry, he'd been a life insurance agent, and he gave me one bit of advice. That was it. And he said, treat it like a profession. Don't do it part way. And that's all he said. Because he had been in insurance, because he had a successful sales career, what he was basically telling me was, you know what? Apply yourself. Learn the business. Get some designations. Work hard. Don't do it part way. It's not a side hustle. And that really resonated with me that, you know what? If I can just do that, that's going to help me a ton. And then my mom, again, for a lot of the same reasons, working hard, continuous learner, living their private lives the same way they live their public lives, were all immensely impactful for me.
In a business setting, is there a particular mentor that has really stood out to you in your career that you learned a ton from?
There's been several, and I've learned some good lessons from them. The guy that hired me, a guy named Paul Henroyd, he was very generous with his time, willing to help, mentor, willing to explain things, to educate, to help, teach, and train. And then his brother, who I worked with as well, Joe, he taught me a really important principle once, which is you can be right, but still be wrong, which is you can be right on something, but not everything is worth a hill dying on. Pick battles, and sometimes it's okay not to compromise your principles at all, but sometimes the juice is not worth the squeeze. And so I've had some really good mentors, people that were willing to help spend time with me. The other thing I did is, because I didn't go to business school, I read a lot. And my friend that was at business school, I got this reading list at one of his classes, like the syllabus. And there were like 20, business books on there. And I started reading them. And so, again, I've been a good sort of person that could read something, take key takeaways from it, and then actually put it into action.
Is there a client or two that comes to your mind that you'll never forget for whatever reason? Did anybody kind of pop to your mind?
Those clients that treated their service providers with fairness, dignity, and respect got even better service than the ones that were hard on them. Now, we gave them good service, don't get me wrong, But then not only did they get better service sometimes, but they also built more successful businesses that had more sustainability. And it's how you do anything is how you do everything. And I would study again, back to observing. I would go into companies and I would talk to the receptionist or the office administrator, whoever was sitting out front, the director of first impressions. And I would ask him or her, hey, how do you like working here? And just make small talk. And then I would never get around to, hey, have you met your the founder or the CEO? And what do you think of Greg or whoever that is? And I was always interested to see what the responses were. If it was, we don't even make eye contact, I don't go there, that was kind of interesting. Or if it was, oh, this person, she or he is the greatest person. They are so friendly. They know my name. They've helped me out. And I'm talking sometimes some pretty good sized companies. And again, it's sort of like, the people that treat the flight attendant well, the waiter, the receptionist, and treat them the way they want to be treated. So that has stood out to me. And so those type of clients have really impacted me, that sort of golden rule. And I think, you know what? When I have people that are my service providers or contractors that work for me or do different things, I want to treat them the same way and be there for them and sort of that golden rule, how and dignity, respect, kindness, fairness, all those type of things.
I'm really interested to see how you answer this question. If you had your 25-year-old self sitting across the desk from you right now, if we could somehow bring him back, what would you tell that 25-year-old you based on your 50-plus-year-old life?
What I would tell my 25-year-old me would be to not take myself too seriously, but take what I do seriously, do my best, but have a little bit more balance sometimes and perspective. And by perspective, I think sometimes, and we do this today, this is an ongoing phenomenon that we get caught up in things happening today that we think are totally important. And we lose the long-term perspective. We get bent out of shape. Someone says something that bothers us, or we're worried about a promotion or whatever it could be. And then you look back and you're thinking, man, I totally stressed out about that. And it's a nothing burger. It doesn't matter once you have that more of that perspective. And so I don't have any real regrets. If I had to do it all over again and I went back to 25, I would just try to have more of a long-term perspective. You want to have urgency, but you want to be smart about it.
Have you had a chance to talk to your boys about that?
Yeah, a little bit for sure. I wonder sometimes I'm oft repeated, rarely listened to sometimes so hearing it from two or three perspectives is good, but I do try to give good counsel. It's that fine line with adult children where you want to sometimes give advice, but you know that unsolicited advice doesn't go great. You would love them just to come to you as the old sage for advice. But so you have to pick your spots, especially with adult children, to how can you give lessons and perspectives without coming across as the get off my lawn guy.
Yeah, I sometimes tend to go that direction. It's not a good look. I don't want to be that way. Let me ask you this question. How do you hope that your kids, and you've got 4 boys and a bunch of grandkids, how do you hope your sons see you?
I like to say I'm a fool. We're incredibly average. And so being incredibly average is okay. It's just doing the same thing, getting up and working hard. So work ethic, consistency, loyalty. I think sort of loyalty, respect, and trust are all kind of intertwined. It's kind of the holy trifecta in some ways. And when you lose one, you kind of lose them all. And so I would hope that when I pass someday, or my kids look at me, or the grandkids, that they would say, hey, he was loyal, he was trustworthy, and people respected him. And then if I could sprinkle in some likability and kindness and fun to be around, those are going to be bonuses.
So what's a lesson that you wished maybe you had learned 10 years earlier?
So I go to college, And I am not the typical college student. Most kids go to college, they have fun, they join fraternities, they build networks, they have a great time, and they do some learning along the way. I went to college thinking every exam, my life would be determined by the result of that exam. And so I probably hyper focused to a point that was not healthy. And so I studied and read and did everything I could. And I had not been a strong student before, but I became a really strong student. And so, yeah, I was kind of crushing it with grades, but I was taking it way too seriously. And so the lesson, years later, I learned that this important lesson, that is C's get degrees. And so I probably needed to relax a little bit more in college, and not every test and exam is life or death. And I treat everything like the bar exam or the medical boards or something like that. It was all about going to graduate school, which I ended up never doing. If I could go back, I would have done more of the relationship building and fun stuff in college. I did some of it. It wasn't when I got married young, and Anne, she's very social, and she broadened my horizons and amped up my socioeconomic status, and one I do. And so that's been good. But being too hard on myself and taking things a little too seriously young, while it did help, it did sort of lay the foundation. There's a good balance in there somewhere.
I've got a couple of pretty intense kids, and sometimes tongue in cheek, I'll say, eat more bran. It's just like they're so tight. But I think that there's a reward for that hyper focus, that sometimes it doesn't make living with them all that enjoyable. I love them. I just want you to know that. But it's,
well, intensity can be a good trait, and all those type of things. But what I've learned, I try to soften it by being self-deprecating at times, and trying. I've tried to evolve in terms of taking what I do seriously, but not myself too seriously. And probably early on, I probably took myself a little bit too seriously.
You're one of the very, very best, Spence, self-deprecation. It isn't that you're so polished that it comes off the wrong way, but sometimes I think there's a line between self-deprecation and, coin a phrase, self-defecation. I think there are some people you just can't be around them because, oh no, no, well, and then they say some cringe-worthy things, but you're one of the very, very best. And I think that being self-deprecating and being sincerely self-deprecating helps people deal a little bit, I think, with your success. Do you know what I mean? They say, wow, he's been really successful, but he doesn't take himself too seriously. I honestly believe that.
Yeah. No, it's nice. You know what? You try to emulate people that you admire. And I've always looked at sort of people that have had success in life, and those that can stay sort of grounded, unassuming, that they, hey, when people say they don't change, everyone changes. We're always evolving and changing in different ways. Sometimes for good, hopefully most of the time for good, but sometimes not so good. But so we're always changing. But I think if you can kind of remember the challenges, the fact that, yeah, hey, hard work matters, smarts matters. You know what else matters is fortune and being in the right place at the right time. And we won the lottery by being born in the United States. I won it by being born into a really great family. I look back at my career, timing, being around the right people, things falling my way. Sure, I showed up and I did the best I could. And sometimes people say hard work creates luck. But at the same time, I think we have to acknowledge that there's a lot more to our overall well-being and success than just ourselves. And we all have people whose shoulders we've stood on. The things that translate to success today are maybe what I would have thought differently 20 years ago, but peace, health, kids doing well, those type of things.
I've got to tell you, Spence, that this has been a fabulous talk, and I really appreciate your candor, your self-deprecation that doesn't even come close to self-defecation. I just want you to know that. But I'm honored to talk to you, and I've watched you and with your boys, maybe closer than you think I have over the years. And I just have a world of respect for you, and I have a world of respect for your work ethic, and it's something
Well,
that
that's nice of you to say. So just keep that distance. If you get too close, it kind of skews it a little bit.
I don't want to get too close. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, it was great. Great conversation. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, man. See ya. One of the things I appreciated most about this conversation is that Spence never measured his life by titles or achievements. He kept coming back to people. The older we get, the more we realize that success isn't only about what we build. It's also about how we treat the people around us, the assumptions we make about others, and the kind of person we're becoming along the way. Every story has two stories, the one you just heard and the one it stirs in your own life. If you'd like to spend a few minutes reflecting on your own story, we've included a few journal prompts inspired by today's conversation in the description below. Because here at the Grandpa Channel, we believe we're all more alike than different. Every person has a story, and every story helps us see our own a little bit more clearly. Until next time, this is Rivers from the Grandpa Channel signing off. Keep looking for stories that connect us all.
You can be right, but still be wrong.